To be honest, Leo was a bit out of sorts. He never expected Nolan to offer to see him off. But time was pressing and he didn't have time to think too much. Nolan went to the garage to get the car and soon drove it in front of Leo. Leo stood in front of the car, paused for 3 seconds, opened the door and sat in the front passenger seat. Nolan started the car and left the Chin family mansion. It wasn't until the car was on the road that Leo still felt it was unreal. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "You're not just pulling a fast one on me and taking me for a spin before going back, are you?" Nolan smiled, then sighed and said, "You're too on guard against me." This kind of guard didn't come about overnight, but was the estrangement left over from a long time. Nolan recalled his childhood. He thought he was the tragic hero in an idol drama. His mother had passed away, his father had remarried, and his stepmother and younger brother were the villains. The whole world had betrayed him. So he was aloof and arrogant, thinking that as long as he was strong enough, he could defeat those villains and win in the end. Nolan admitted that at that time he really enjoyed being better than Leo in everything and leaving Leo far behind. The thoughts of a teenager in his second-year syndrome were simple. He disliked his stepmother's child, always took the lead, got countless praises. Looking back at that so-called younger brother standing quietly in the shadow, he didn't feel pity but rather proud. So what if he had both parents? He still couldn't compare with him and was stepped on by him. This kind of thinking persisted for a long time. Until that incident happened. Nolan pulled his thoughts back and didn't continue the previous topic. Instead, he said, "How about taking a plane instead?" While driving, he said quickly, "Let's not even talk about whether you can buy a train ticket. Even the fastest high-speed train takes 4 hours, and with the travel time on the way, you won't arrive until at least 3 o'clock. It's better to take a plane. It only takes 1 hour and 40 minutes, and it's easier to arrange with the airline than with the railway." That was indeed the case. Leo traveled on business frequently and was a high-quality customer of the airline. It wouldn't be slow for him to use the special channel, and he could also arrange a vehicle in City C in advance. Nolan originally wanted Leo to check quickly. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw that Leo had already started to make arrangements on his phone, so he closed his mouth. After a moment, Leo made a decision and said, "Go to the airport." Nolan curled his lips and said, "Okay." The vehicle sped through the late night. There were few people on the road on New Year's Eve. After getting on the airport expressway, it drove very fast. On the contrary, the closer they got to the suburbs, the more they could hear the sound of firecrackers, bringing a bit of the New Year atmosphere. The two remained silent in the car. Nolan knew that Leo would never initiate a conversation with him, so he said, "We left the two elders at home. I wonder if they'll quarrel." Leo said, "Definitely. Elena herself had said so." Nolan said, "Well, it's okay. After all these years, they should have a quarrel." Leo didn't respond again. Nolan didn't mind and continued on his own, "We should also have a talk after all these years." Leo glanced at him quickly and remained silent. Nolan smiled and said, "You didn't say there's nothing to talk about. Does it mean you want to chat with me?" Leo said coldly, "If you keep talking nonsense, then really don't talk." Nolan laughed. After that he said, "I feel very guilty towards you." He said this with a smiling voice. It was hard to tell how much of it was true and how much was false. Leo knew which thing he was referring to and said, "You were injured at that time. It has nothing to do with you." The fact that Leo could talk about that incident in such a calm tone showed that he had basically gotten over it, which made Nolan envious. Leo had let it go, but he couldn't. He recalled the situation at that time countless times. He wondered if he could have done better, would the result have been different. He had always been very strict with himself since childhood, always aiming to be the best in everything. Only in that matter did he completely fail. From then on, he no longer adhered to perfectionism and began to do as he pleased. And Leo also seemed to have changed into a different person. The well-behaved child was gone, and he became sharp-tongued and even less likable. Nolan was driving with the window slightly open. The night wind slipped in through the crack, blowing his hair. He said, "Anyway, I owe you an apology for what happened in childhood, for that incident." Leo remained silent. When he was young, when everything was snatched away by his elder brother, he must never have thought that one day he would wait for his brother's apology. Upon hearing Nolan's words, Leo didn't feel the excitement of finally seeing the light after a long wait, nor did he sneer with the thought of "if only you had known earlier." Instead, he was very calm. Calm and composed, all grievances vanished. Leo said, "I accept it." Nolan smiled again. He deliberately said, "Normally, people would be more polite. Who would directly say, 'I accept'?" Leo said, "I'm not an ordinary person." Nolan couldn't stop laughing and said twice, "It's so good, so good." It was truly a wonderful thing that the two brothers could talk calmly in the same space. 2 years ago, they couldn't even have imagined such a scene. Speaking of which, we should thank Secretary Lucas. Nolan mentioned Lucas. It seems that since he came to your side, everything has been moving in a good direction. Leo let out a sneer. Don't blame everything on him. Nolan said, it's not shifting the blame. Really, he's very good. Maybe Leo himself didn't realize it, but Lucas had influenced Leo, causing changes in his mood and personality and also altering his choices at every step. Then everything changed. No wonder people say that when you're in love with the right person, the world is right. Upon hearing Nolan's words, Leo became alert. Don't have any ideas about him. Nolan laughed. How could I? I'm just happy for you. Meeting such a wonderful person, I'm waiting to attend your wedding. Leo didn't even deny it. Nolan burst into another fit of laughter, teasing Leo for not knowing how to be shy. The vehicle was traveling very fast and it only took half an hour to reach the airport. Leo was in a hurry to get off the car, but Nolan called him back. Leo turned around. In the night wind, Nolan had a very gentle smile on his face. He said, no matter what you're going to do, just go ahead and do it. They all knew what Leo was going to do. Leo asked, you won't stop me? Nolan shook his head and said, I've already said that I'm only responsible for doing research and won't be involved in the company's management anymore. This was Nolan's promise to Leo. Leo continued to ask, what about the Fu family? Nolan smiled and said, I won't interfere either. Whether you can handle Joseph or not depends on your own ability. Leo nodded to show that he understood. Nolan waved his hand gracefully, looking like a charming playboy. Leo gave him a deep look and then turned around and walked towards the airport terminal. Lucas was sitting on the sofa, watching the Spring Festival gala with his parents, but he was a bit absent-minded. Leo had replied to him just now, but he still couldn't be completely at ease. Leo sounded normal, but Lucas keenly sensed something was off and couldn't calm down. He was restless. At around 11 o'clock, he sent another message to Leo but didn't get a reply. He thought for a while, stood up from the sofa and walked to the balcony to make a call. It turned out that the phone was already off. Lucas was completely sure that there was really a problem with Leo. He paced anxiously on the balcony, gritted his teeth, and called Nolan. Nolan answered the phone quite quickly. As if knowing what he was going to ask, he said with a smile, don't panic. It's okay. He'll contact you later. Lucas couldn't get any useful information from Nolan and still couldn't feel at ease. He kept walking back and forth on the balcony. It must be a quarrel with the chairman. Lucas could even imagine the way Leo sneered at Alexander. Moreover, they would definitely bring him up when they quarreled. Lucas felt his heart clench at the thought of himself becoming Leo's handle. In the past, he always laughed at the indecisiveness of the protagonists in movies and TV shows. But when he experienced it himself, he found that he couldn't be so free and easy. Because he liked that person, he cared about his family's attitude and the opinions of his family members. He hoped that he could stay away from disputes and be happy. Now it seemed impossible. Lucas felt a little regretful. The sound of the neighbor's TV came over from time to time. Lucas stood on the balcony. At this moment, with all the lights on in the houses, it was the time for family reunions. He wondered how Leo was doing. Lucas called several more times, but the phone was still off. Seeing that it was almost 12 o'clock, Lucas almost contacted Nolan again. At this time, Leo's message finally popped up on the screen. What's wrong? There are so many missed calls. Lucas called back immediately. Leo answered the phone quickly. Lucas blurted out, what on earth are you doing? Leo's breathing sounded a bit rapid. He said, nothing. I almost missed your call. Lucas was both anxious and worried. He asked, are you okay? Leo wondered what could be wrong. Lucas wanted to ask, didn't you quarrel with the chairman? But he couldn't bring himself to say it. Leo looked at the time and said, don't talk about those things. The point is that it's almost 12 o'clock now. Lucas looked back and found that the 4 hosts on the living room TV had taken their places. They were staring at the countdown and saying blessings. It would be midnight soon. Lucas held his breath and heard Leo say, I wanted to ring in the new year with you, but I can't make it. Lucas also felt a bit regretful. If he had known that Chinese New Year's Eve would be like this, he should have invited Leo to City C earlier. It doesn't matter. There will be plenty of time in the future. Lucas comforted. He suddenly heard a strange noise on Leo's end, like the sound of a vehicle moving. He asked warily, are you outside? Leo didn't answer. He just said, although we can't meet, I want to be the first to wish you a happy new year. Lucas smiled. He took his phone and walked into the living room. When his parents saw him on the phone, they looked at each other and didn't make a sound to disturb him. Lucas looked at the clock and said, "It's almost time." Leo said, "Yeah, and then I can't see the time. Count down for me." He was indeed outside. Lucas was surprised, but he didn't have time to ask more. Staring at the time, he said, "There's still 1 minute left. Then we have to hurry." Actually, Leo could see the time on the vehicle's central control screen, but he just wanted to hear Lucas count in his gentle voice. He really wanted to be by Lucas' side right away, but he couldn't. No matter how much money he had, he couldn't do it. Lucas was a bit nervous and quietly counted along with the hosts on TV, 5, 4, 3. As soon as the 1 fell, Leo said, "Baby, Happy New Year." Cheers came from the TV and outside the house. Lucas' face turned red in an instant. Happy New Year." He stammered. "I wish you good health, happiness, and all your wishes come true in the new year." Leo said some cheesy blessings, but Lucas still felt sweet. Then he said, "I have something to do now. I'll contact you later and send you a big red envelope." After saying that, he hung up the phone. Lucas put away his phone and then saw his parents looking at him. Camila was cracking melon seeds and said teasingly, "Once you have a boyfriend, you forget your mother." Lucas' face was still a bit red. He sat next to his mother and coquettishly said, "No way, Mom. I love you the most. I wish you to become younger and younger in the new year." The family of 3 exchanged a few auspicious words. Camila and Miles were getting ready to tidy up and go to bed, but Lucas was still sitting on the sofa. Miles asked him, "Aren't you going to sleep?" Lucas said, "I'll sit here for a while. I can't fall asleep. I'll grab a few more red envelopes." Camila wanted him to rest early, but Miles stopped her and said, "Young people have a lot of social activities. Leave him alone." Only then did Camila give up. Lucas had a bold idea in mind but wasn't sure. He could only sit on the sofa waiting for Leo to contact him. He had been on tenterhooks all night because of Leo, but Leo had called him baby, so he forgave him. Lucas was sitting on the sofa, not in the mood to send New Year greetings everywhere and grab red envelopes. He just sat there in a daze. After a while, the doorbell rang. He jumped up suddenly, rushed to the door, and opened it without even asking. A warm embrace with the chill of the night enveloped him. Lucas threw himself into Leo's arms and said in a muffled voice, "Why did you come?" Lucas had had a vague premonition before, but he was still very shocked when he actually saw Leo standing at the door. On New Year's Eve, covering a distance of more than 1,000 kilometers, this person came to his side alone at the fastest speed. Leo hugged Lucas tightly, buried his face in Lucas's neck, and murmured, "I wanted to see you." Lucas's nose felt a bit sore. They had only been separated the day before, but because of the long distance, it felt like they hadn't seen each other for ages. Lucas asked softly, "Are you tired? Was it hard?" Leo said, "I'm not tired at all when I see you." Lucas asked again, "Then how did you find me?" Although he knew there must be a way to find him, Leo's efficiency was incredibly high. Leo said, "I'll never get lost as long as you're with me." Lucas awkwardly shrank his neck in his arms. "What's going on?" "The president is especially sweet today." The two were hugging at the door and wanted to stay in each other's arms a little longer. Suddenly, there came a cough from behind. Leo lifted his head from Lucas's ear and saw Camila and Miles looking at them. Lucas noticed Leo pause and subconsciously turned his head. After seeing his parents, he immediately jumped out of Leo's arms. He cleared his throat and said, blushing, "Mom and Dad, didn't you go to sleep?" Camila sized up Leo and didn't answer Lucas's question. Instead, she said to Leo, "Leo, you're really good with words." She even blushed at the words about never getting lost. Leo had been standing there brazenly, but now he was completely flustered and involuntarily wiped his face. Miles tugged at his wife. It was one thing to hear it, but why expose it? He smiled at Leo and said, "Mr. Leo, did you come directly from City S?" Leo nodded and said, "Aunt Yi, Uncle Kong, Happy New Year. Sorry to bother you." He had come on an impulse. Only then did he realize that this was his first time visiting Lucas's home and he had come empty-handed. He said remorsefully, "Sorry, I didn't bring any gifts. It's really inappropriate." Miles said, "You sent so many things before. We haven't even thanked you yet. Come in quickly." Leo was reacting slowly at this time. Lucas grabbed his hand and led him into the living room. Leo said again, "I didn't bring anything. It's really sorry to bother you in the early morning of the first day of the Lunar New Year." Lucas had never seen the president so embarrassed before. Leo even turned around and wanted to leave. I'd better come back when it's dawn. He could go and buy some things on the way. Lucas quickly grabbed him and said, Where can you go at this time? Camila also said, Since you're here, don't be so polite. He had come all the way at this time. It was obvious that something had happened at home. Although Camila was a little curious, it was not convenient for her to ask too many questions. She said to Lucas, You're responsible for arranging things for him. This is not your small rental apartment. There are empty rooms in our house. She even added, Whether he stays in your room or goes to the guest room is up to you. Now, Lucas was also extremely embarrassed. Miles quickly pushed his wife into the house and said, We're going to bed first. Mr. Leo, make yourself at home and don't be polite. After saying that, the two of them went into the bedroom. Lucas and Leo stood there. After a while, Lucas said to Leo, Mr. Leo, go to my room and take a shower. Leo nodded. The Yi family's house was of a decent size. Lucas's room had its own bathroom. Although it couldn't compare with Yunting Mansion, it was indeed much better than that small rental house. Fortunately, Leo had brought a little luggage when he left the Chin family and had clothes to change. By the time he finished cleaning up, it was already past 2 o'clock. Lucas beckoned him over, let him sit on his bed, and carefully dried his hair. Leo said, I'll go and sleep in the guest room. Lucas stopped him, saying, No, can you stand the torture of being a clean freak? You'll force yourself again and won't be able to sleep all night. Besides, since my parents are like that, there's no need to pretend in front of them. Leo fell silent. After drying his hair, Lucas pulled Leo to lie on the bed with him and turned off the light. It was Chinese New Year's Eve. Many families had left their night watching lights on. The light came in through the window, and the room wasn't completely dark. After Lucas got used to it for a while, he could make out the outline of Leo's face. He reached out his hand, touched Leo's face, and said softly, Come on. What on earth happened? Leo's voice was a bit low. Nothing unusual, just another fight. Just as expected. Lucas wanted to sigh. As soon as he made the initial sound of a sigh, Leo covered his mouth with his hand and said, Don't sigh. If you sigh on the first day of the Lunar New Year, all your luck for the whole year will be gone. Lucas glared at him in the dim light. I don't know who it is, but arguing with family on New Year's Eve is also inauspicious. Leo pulled Lucas into his arms. Lucas leaned on his shoulder and gently patted his broad back, saying, Just let the argument go. Don't take it to heart. Leo said, I'm not angry. Facing Alexander, he really wasn't angry. He just found it ridiculous. Afraid that he might be sad. Lucas changed the subject. Since you're here, stay in City C for a few more days. Leo said, Of course. I'll go back with you. Just as Lucas was about to say that they had 6 days and could make good arrangements, he heard Leo say in a very suppressed voice, There's something I want to tell you. Would you like to listen? Lucas immediately became alert and said, What's the matter? Leo was silent for a moment and said, That incident happened a long time ago. It's not very decent for me. Lucas immediately understood. He knew that something had happened in the Chin family, which had greatly changed the personalities of Leo and Nolan, and also deepened the rift between Leo and Alexander. Instead of rushing to hear the story, he asked, Will it make you uncomfortable to talk about it? Leo hugged Lucas tightly and said, Maybe it will, but I want to tell you. His mother's outburst and his elder brother's apology on New Year's Eve had given Leo a new understanding. There were more people who cared about him than he had thought. This feeling was very wonderful, which made him can't help but want to share the past with the person closest to him. Lucas gently stroked Leo's scapula and said, Then tell me, if you feel uncomfortable, I'll share it with you. The considerate Lucas was really a sweetie. Leo lowered his head and kissed the little secretary's forehead, then began to recall. It was when I was 13. At that time, Nolan had just finished the college entrance examination. His grades were excellent. Everyone was praising him. The chairman boasted about him 24 hours a day. And I had just entered junior high school, in the same school as Nolan was back then. I was under a lot of pressure. Lucas could imagine that scene. The academic performance of many wealthy children is quite poor. Usually, their parents simply pay to send them abroad. Those who get in on their own are extremely rare. Nolan is one of them, and he is also a top-notch academic achiever. After Leo enrolled, he was destined not to have his own identity, but to be called Nolan's younger brother. Something happened that year. Leo paused as he got to the main point. Lucas didn't urge him, but just continued to stroke him, silently comforting him. Leo took a breath and said, "As you know, the chairman built his business from scratch and used many unscrupulous means before, which made him enemies with many people." Lucas's heart skipped a beat. The chairman was always accompanied by Carter, so those people had no way to deal with him. Instead, they wanted to target Nolan and me. That day, Nolan was invited by the teacher to give a lecture to the junior students at school. We went home together. Lucas grabbed Leo's clothes tightly. You can probably imagine what happened. Those people held us hostage and wanted to blackmail the chairman with us. Leo put it more euphemistically. In fact, it was a kidnapping. Lucas's heart tightened into a ball and ached with each throb. No wonder Leo reacted so strongly when he was kidnapped by Carter. Leo himself had suffered such pain. Leo noticed Lucas' strangeness, stroked his hair and said, "At that time, Nolan was already an adult and quite tall. Unfortunately, he was a nerd. Those people were afraid that he would struggle, so they dealt with him harshly. They probably thought I was a primary school student and didn't take me seriously. I wasn't injured." Later, the chairman arrived in time with his people. Lucas let out a sigh of relief and then spoke, "Thank goodness." Leo continued to stroke his hair and said, "It's a pity that there's no thank goodness." Lucas's heart rose again. The situation at that time was a bit complicated. Leo said, Nolan was lying on the ground, and there were those lawless elements beside him. I was standing on the other side. The chairman only had time to save one person. Lucas couldn't help but tremble. From a rational analysis, Alexander should have rushed towards Leo at that time. Since Nolan had lost the ability to move and was an adult, it was difficult for those people to take away someone who couldn't walk on their own, so they would probably just give up. Leo was different. At that time, he was just a half-grown child. For those kidnappers, it was no problem to take him away. As long as Alexander was fast enough and snatched Leo back immediately, both Nolan and Leo could have been saved. But Lucas could guess the result. The chairman went to check on Nolan's injuries. Leo said. Lucas suddenly hugged Leo tightly. Leo didn't stop and continued speaking, as if he didn't say it this time, he would never want to mention it again. Later, I was taken away by those people and locked up for several days. Leo's voice was a bit ethereal. They wanted to keep me alive and gave me dirty food. I didn't eat a single bite. That's when I developed mysophobia. Since then, Leo has felt nauseous whenever he sees dirty things or dirty people. Lucas hugged Leo. His throat was so tight that he couldn't make a sound. He forced himself to speak and said, "You've suffered." Leo rubbed his furry head with his chin and said, "Actually, it wasn't that bad. Those people were negotiating conditions with the chairman while keeping me locked up. Maybe because they saw that I wasn't eating, they relaxed their vigilance on me. Later, I escaped on my own. Coincidentally, as soon as I ran out, Carter showed up. In the end, he got the good reputation of saving me," Leo said coldly. For many years later, he boasted that he was my savior and kept pushing his luck. He did contribute back then, so I didn't really do anything to him. But he shouldn't have set his sights on you. And in the way of kidnapping, which he hated the most. Lucas said in a breathy voice, "I'm fine." What he endured that time was less than 1/10,000th of what Leo had experienced. The two hugged each other intimately. Leo said, "Anyway, that's the situation. I came to my senses after seeing the chairman running towards Nolan." Leo would never forget the expression on Alexander's face at that time. So eager, so panicked, afraid that something might happen to his eldest son. He rushed towards Nolan without a second's delay. Leo had never seen Alexander show such an expression to him. Later, he thought that maybe he shouldn't blame Alexander. Maybe Alexander didn't even see him at that time. The chairman only had Nolan in his eyes. From that incident on, Leo knew that there was no savior in his world. No one would come to help him. He had to rely on himself. So he escaped from the kidnappers by himself. If he wanted something, he would definitely get it through his own efforts. He wanted others' attention, the wealth of the Chin family, and the company that belonged to him. Leo lowered his head and got closer to Lucas. Now he wanted his little secretary. Lucas couldn't hold back anymore. He hugged Leo and said, "The past is over. Don't be sad. From now on, you have me. Although I'm not very useful, I'll accompany you and help you. I'll organize your office, send emails for you, write manuscripts for you, take good meeting notes, receive visitors, arrange your itinerary, build good relationships with clients, purchase large value gifts, book hotels, and manage the president's office well. I'll also do quarterly summaries. I can also solve administrative problems in various departments of the company and assist you when you go out for meetings," Lucas said anxiously and a bit incoherently. He listed the things he could do one by one and was annoyed to find that they were so trivial. His voice gradually became softer. Leo had a strange expression. Fortunately, it couldn't be seen in the dim light. He said, "I'm paying you for all these things." Lucas. Oh right. Besides these, he had nothing else he could do for Leo. Lucas instantly became even more depressed. Leo hugged his lower back and lifted him up a bit, saying, "Silly, you're not useless at all. You're very useful." He pecked Lucas's lips one by one and said, "You're the only one in the world I want to kiss." Lucas was silently being kissed by him. His mind was still immersed in the memories Leo had just mentioned, and he said, "There's still one thing I can do for you. I can share it with you. Now you only have half of the sadness left." Hearing this, Leo couldn't hold back anymore. He rolled over and pinned Lucas down on the bed, biting his lips hard. Lucas felt like he was floating in the water, constantly rising and falling, surviving on the oxygen Leo gave him. Leo kissed him seriously and forcefully this time, as if he was trying to confirm something and doing his best. Lucas was willing to cooperate, but in the end, he still stopped. Leo hugged Lucas and rolled over. Lucas could clearly sense Leo's state and stammered, "Actually," Leo immediately understood what Lucas meant. His voice was hoarse. "Your parents are still nearby." Thinking about it, it really wasn't appropriate. They weren't that thick-skinned. And we haven't prepared anything. Both of them were beginners and had no protection measures. If they continued in this situation, it would probably be quite a mess. Leo quietly hugged Lucas and said, "This is good enough." Leo's body was tense, but his heart had never been so relaxed. Just a few hours ago, he still thought it was a terrible spring festival, but now he felt that this new year was going quite well. He seemed to have got to know Elena and Nolan again and also got to know himself again. Just as Lucas said, with someone to share for him, the world had become different. Lucas nestled affectionately in his arms. Thinking about the things Leo had gone through in childhood made him feel heartache. He was now extremely eager to do something for Leo. Blushing, he said, "Do you want to, Leo quickly refused, saying, "We can't dirty anything here." Leo already felt guilty about visiting the Yi family without bringing any gifts. If he were to make a mess here, he wouldn't be able to get over it in his heart. He wanted to respect Lucas's parents. This was the insistence of a clean freak. Lucas could understand, but it was a bit uncomfortable for the two of them to just hold each other without doing anything. He looked up, gazing at Leo with bright eyes, and said, "How about going to the bathroom?" Leo looked back at him in the same way. Lucas thought Leo was going to refuse again. He thought the president was really perseverant and had amazing self-control. The next second, Leo stood up, picked Lucas up directly, and carried him into the bathroom. When Lucas woke up the next day, there was no one beside him. He stretched, ruffled his hair, glanced at the time casually, and then jumped out of bed right away. Oh my God! It was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon. He quickly got out of bed, finished washing up, and rushed out of the room. Camila was sitting in the living room. Seeing him come out, she teased, "Master, you're up." Normally, Lucas would answer calmly, "I'm here to pay my respects to the madam." But he was still thinking about Leo. Looking around, he asked, "Cheen, that guy, where is he?" Camila said sourly, "A married son is like spilled water." Lucas felt a bit embarrassed and said, "Mom, what are you talking about?" Camila was also stunned for a moment and reflected on why she used the word married. At this time, Miles walked out of the kitchen with a plate and told Lucas, "Mr. Leo is cooking." Lucas quickly walked into the kitchen to help. Leo was tossing the wok. Every time Lucas saw this scene, he would be in a daze. He leaned over, with his back to the kitchen door, kissed Leo and said, "You've worked hard." Leo glanced at him and said, "Not hard at all. I'm trying to gain points in front of your mom and dad." Lucas stared back at him and then helped him carry the dishes. This meal was served late. Camila and Miles didn't ask the younger generation about what happened last night. They casually chatted about other topics, and the atmosphere was harmonious. After the meal, Camila gave Leo a red envelope, which left all the men present stunned. Leo was simply not used to such a situation and stood there motionless. Lucas and Miles were thinking that giving a red envelope to the CEO was really a creative move. Camila thought Leo was being polite and said, "Quickly take it. It's not much, just a token of good luck. If you don't take it, I'll get angry." Leo paused for a moment and still accepted it. He said to Camila, "Thank you, Aunt Yi. I wish you good health and all the best in the coming year." Only then was Camila satisfied. There is a custom of not going out on the first day of the Lunar New Year. Leo also stayed with the 3 members of the Yi family in the house. Camila and Miles soon sent Lucas and Leo to their own room. They watched the Spring Festival Gala in the living room. Leo hadn't felt like a junior for a long time. He wouldn't even feel like this in front of Elena. Lucas was a little worried and asked, "Mr. Leo, have my parents bothered you?" Leo stroked his hair and said, "How could I be bothered? I'm very happy." Lucas's parents had an air of earthly warmth, gentle and kind. It's just that this house was still a bit small, and the people were too close to each other. Leo felt uncomfortable all over just thinking that Lucas's parents were next door. Instead of worrying about that, let's discuss something else. Leo looked at Lucas and said, "For example, when will you change your way of addressing me?" Lucas was stunned and asked, "What?" Leo said meaningfully, "You called me that guy again outside the kitchen just now." Lucas froze and said after a long while, "But I don't know how to address you." He could call Leo by his full name behind his back, but in front of Leo himself, apart from Mr. Leo, Lucas couldn't think of any other way to address him. Leo said, "In front of your parents, we should act more intimately. Call me by my name." Lucas opened his mouth but couldn't make a sound. Leo got excited and was being serious with him. "Is it that difficult? Why do I have no problem calling you Lucas? Chotong." Lucas covered his face and said, "That's because you have a thicker skin." Just hearing Leo call him Lucas made Lucas a bit unbearable. Leo held his hand and coaxed him. "As long as you say the first word, it'll be easier later. You can call me Leo just like Elena does." Lucas silently repeated those 2 words and felt extremely embarrassed. "Come on, give it a try." Leo was very patient, but Lucas still couldn't say it and said painfully, "I'll feel uncomfortable all over if I don't call you Mr. Leo." The feeling of overstepping one's bounds lingered. Leo looked at him and finally showed a forgiving expression. "All right then, choose another one, either husband or older brother." Leo looked like he wouldn't let Lucas go until he called him something. Lucas held it in for a long time and finally let out a soft, "older brother." Only then was Leo satisfied. He stroked Lucas' hair and said, "Baby." Lucas was going crazy. He was driven wild by Leo's flirtatious behavior. Fortunately, Leo only showed his flirtatious side to Lucas. In front of Ye's parents, he was quite normal. Not only was he normal, but he was also extremely capable. He was polite, well-educated, and could cook. Camila admired him very much. Lucas was confused. He wondered why Leo was so different in public and in private. Later, he could only attribute it to the fact that the CEO had been suppressing himself for the first 30 years of his life. Finally, he met Lucas and could act coquettishly without restraint. Leo went to the hotel on the second day of the Lunar New Year. After all, it was not proper for him to stay at Lucas's house. Camila told Lucas to take Leo around City C and come back for dinner at night. So, it was inevitable that they would meet relatives who came to pay New Year greetings. Lucas introduced Leo to the relatives as his boyfriend. This news spread from 1 to 10 and from 10 to 100. There were especially many people who came to the Yi family to pay New Year greetings this year. Everyone wanted to see Lucas's boyfriend, who was said to be tall, handsome, and seemed very rich. The relatives of the old Kong family also heard the rumor. Originally, Miles had a relatively distant relationship with the Kong family. Many people only saw each other once a year and had the New Year's Eve dinner together on New Year's Eve. Logically, there was no need to pay New Year greetings to each other. But when they heard that Lucas had brought a boyfriend back, the people of the Kong family became curious one after another and tried every means to find an excuse to come and have a look, especially the aunt who sat next to Lucas during the New Year's Eve dinner. She always held a grudge against the fact that Lucas had retorted her with words. Now, when she heard that Lucas's boyfriend had come, she was itching to see who this person was. But she was different from others. She said that there was no reason for elders to pay New Year greetings to juniors. It should be Lucas who took his boyfriend to visit them in person. When this word reached the Yi family, Miles told Lucas not to pay attention, shouting for the nephew's boyfriend to pay a visit from afar, and they were not very close relatives. How shameless. Miles said, "Mr. Leo is our guest. We will treat him with courtesy. Don't act as my host for other families." It meant not to meddle in other people's business. Miles was always very gentle in character. Usually, Camila took care of family matters. This time, it involved the Kong family. Miles went against his usual self and came forward to confront the relatives of his own family. One reason was that Camila was not convenient to come forward, and the other was that he was afraid of neglecting Leo. When the aunt received such a response, she just couldn't swallow her anger. She actually still had the nerve to come to the Yi family. She wanted to see what kind of person Lucas, a homosexual, had found as his partner. It sounded like a gigolo. It was said that he was very rich. How could it be? She didn't believe it at all. How could there be a rich man who was with a man? It must be just for fun. The aunt dragged her uncle, took her own children, and carried several packages of gifts given by others and came to the Yi family. Since they were guests when they came, Camila and Miles were polite to them without being rude. As soon as the aunt entered the house, she looked around. Camila knew what she was thinking and said with a smile, "Lucas took Leo out for a stroll. We always have to let Leo see the scenery of our city C." The aunt was a bit disappointed and said, "Indeed. Let him see the big city." Camila smiled and said, "Leo is from City S." The aunt had never been to City S and didn't think much of it. She murmured in her heart that Lucas' mother was so full of herself just because her daughter had a son-in-law from City S. Besides, it's not certain that he'll become the son-in-law. The aunt hadn't been to the Yi family's house for many years. She walked around the rooms to look around and commented from time to time, "This design is not good. It looks nice, but it must be inconvenient to clean." The uncle sat on the sofa and talked with Miles about the international situation. When he got excited, he cursed that the imperialists were always harboring evil intentions. His voice was so loud that the floor seemed to tremble. The kids they brought were left unattended. Bored, They rummaged around and even wanted to go into Lucas' room. Seeing the kid heading towards the bedroom, Camila quickly called out, "Max, what are you doing?" The kid shouted, "I want to play with the computer." Camila said, "There are work files on your brother Lucas' computer. You can't touch it. Go to the living room and have some fruits." The aunt butted in. "What secrets could there be? Can't a kid just play around?" Camila had a fiery temper. She was being polite only for the sake of the Kong family. Now her patience was wearing thin. She smiled and said, "If kids aren't well taught, their hands might carry static electricity. It's better not to touch the computer." The aunt's face changed immediately. "What do you mean by that?" Just then, there was a noise at the door. Lucas came back with Leo. The aunt immediately put aside the previous dispute and quickly followed Camila to the door to greet them. Lucas had received a message from Camila when he was outside and knew that there were unwelcome guests at home. Seeing the aunt now, he raised the corners of his lips and smiled. "Happy New Year, Aunt." The aunt replied casually and looked at the person beside Lucas. She was stunned. Leo was wearing a well-tailored overcoat. Just by looking at the texture of the material, one could tell it was very expensive. He looked up with deep and imposing facial features. His eyes were deep and charming, sharp, with a cold air about him. Handsome as he was, he had nothing to do with the term pretty boy. Leo's appearance was so different from what the aunt had imagined that she stood there, stunned. Seeing this, Lucas said to Leo, "This is my relative." Leo glanced over indifferently with a look of 3 tense coldness and 7 tense aloofness and nodded as a greeting, "Hello." Leo was born with an air of a superior and was especially cold towards strangers. Lucas introduced so casually, so it seemed that this was not a popular relative. Leo's attitude turned cold accordingly. The aunt felt slighted and uncomfortable. She didn't dare to say anything to Leo and inexplicably felt a bit afraid of Lucas' boyfriend. So she could only say to Lucas, "You're never at home all year round. It's so hard for you to come back during the spring festival, but instead of staying with your parents, you're out having fun." Lucas smiled and said, "There's nothing I can do. There are too many people coming to the house during the spring festival, taking up my parents' time. They don't even consider that I've come back with great difficulty and want to accompany my parents." The aunt was at a loss for words. Had Lucas been so sharp-tongued before? Lucas didn't mention that he learned his sarcasm from Leo. He led Leo into the house. When the uncle saw Leo, he happily praised Lucas' boyfriend for being handsome. The aunt felt even more uncomfortable. There is always competition among relatives. Lucas is excellent both in terms of education and work. In comparison, he outshines all the other children in the old Kong family. The aunt often has her own children compared with Lucas and she is not convinced. Everyone was sitting in the living room. The aunt eyed Leo and asked about his job. Leo replied casually, "I'm a colleague of Lucas." The aunt immediately showed a complicated expression and said, "Working in the same company. That's not good." Leo wasn't very interested in chatting with people, but he still gave enough face to the elder and said, "It's okay. We have more time to be together, which is very convenient." The aunt covered her lips and laughed, "It's not convenient. What if you break up in the future? It'll be so awkward." Leo's face darkened. The 3 members of the Yi family also looked embarrassed. Although many people think this way about office romances, who would say it to someone's face? Camila forced a smile and said, "Don't worry. They won't break up even if the company goes bankrupt." Miles tugged at his wife's clothes, telling her not to speak if she couldn't say the right thing. The boss of the company was right there. He said to the aunt, "The children will arrange their own affairs well. Let's not interfere as elders." Miles is a teacher and assumes the attitude of an educated person, so the aunt doesn't say much. But Leo insists on adding a sentence to show his attitude, "We won't break up and the company won't go bankrupt either." After he finishes speaking, he pulls Lucas' hand over and gives it a reassuring squeeze, looking mature and reliable. Lucas shyly smiles. The uncle feels a bit embarrassed seeing the young people showing affection. The aunt covers her own child's eyes and complains, "Don't let the kids see this and learn bad things." Camila is puzzled. "See what? Learn what bad things?" The aunt says, "Well, it's always not very good for 2 men to be together." Camila wants to turn over the table. Miles also looks unhappy. Just as he is about to reason with the aunt, he is stopped by Lucas. Lucas says to the aunt with a beaming smile, "If Auntie thinks it's not good, you can call the police and see if the police will arrest us. If the police don't care about it, Auntie, you'd better not meddle either." He seriously says, Auntie, if your thoughts can't keep up with the times, the kids will dislike you as an old-fashioned person. Then the kids will listen to you even less. The aunt says, I only said one sentence, but you can say 10. Lucas says, there's no way. Seeing Auntie so taciturn, you must not communicate with Max at home usually. I can only talk more. I'm afraid Max will get depressed and go astray. The aunt is extremely angry. It's not up to you to educate my child. Camila then speaks up and throws the words back. It's not up to you to educate my child either. Now the relationship has completely broken down. Although the uncle is confused, he senses that the atmosphere is wrong and immediately says to his wife, it's getting late. Let's go. Camila doesn't want to keep the uncle's family for dinner either because she notices that every time they are with relatives, Leo only moves his chopsticks symbolically and hardly eats anything. But the aunt can't swallow her pride and says, come to pay New Year greetings and you don't even offer a meal? Just then, Leo suddenly stands up, walks to the side of the bedroom and grabs the little kid who is trying to sneak into Lucas' room. He grabbed the child by the collar like catching a chick, using only 2 fingers with a look of disgust on his face. He threw the child to the aunt and said, sneaky? Then he turned to Lucas and asked, go into the room and check if anything is missing. The aunt's face flushed red and she said he just wanted to play on the computer. Lucas said seriously, then I have to check if there is any loss of the files in the computer. Leo echoed beside him, you really have to check. It would be a big deal if it's broken. It's a contract for a project worth hundreds of millions. If it's damaged, we need to call the police. Even if it's not damaged, if it's leaked, compensation has to be paid. Lucas said worriedly, I remember the compensation seems to be 10 million. The two of them echoed each other quickly with only a few numbers standing out, which left the aunt stunned. The aunt said, don't scare people. Max didn't do anything. Lucas turned his head and said, my computer has a security system. There will be a video record as soon as it's turned on. Let's call the police and have them take a look. Only then was the aunt scared. She said, so what if he touched your computer? Max is just a child. Why be so serious with a child? Lucas said, the child is too young to be responsible, but we can hold the guardian accountable. He asked worriedly, Aunt, do you have 10 million in savings? Can you afford to pay? The aunt stammered, what 10 million? You're just lying. I don't have it and neither do you. Lucas showed a half-smiling expression and said casually, Aunt, you're so uneducated. We're talking about contracts worth hundreds of millions. How could we not even have 10 million? Leo then said to Camila, Auntie, this time when I came to City C and bothered you, I bought you a car. Camila was stunned and subconsciously asked, what kind of car? Leo said calmly, a Cayenne. It's parked downstairs. Lucas glanced at him quickly and gave Leo a look. Leo didn't understand, so Lucas had to say it himself. It's a type of Porsche. The aunt might not understand what a Cayenne is. Leo continued, if I had known your relatives were so rich that they don't even care about 10 million, I should have bought a Cullinan. Lucas explained in time again, the Cullinan is a Rolls Royce. The aunt couldn't keep up with their conversation at all. She didn't understand Cayenne and Cullinan and only barely knew Porsche and Rolls Royce. When they talked, it was like a United Nations meeting. Only then was the aunt frightened. She took the child's hand, stood up from the sofa, tugged at her husband, and said, let's go first. Lucas still said, hey, Aunt, don't go. I haven't reported the case to the police yet. The aunt dragged her family members away quickly and said, we're all relatives. What's the point of reporting a case? Don't cause trouble during the spring festival. After saying that, the 3 of them scurried away. When they got downstairs, the aunt's heart was still pounding. The uncle saw a really expensive big black car parked downstairs and said carelessly, is this the Cayenne for Miles? He looked extremely envious and said, the son-in-law Miles found is really rich. He's giving a car now. Won't he give a villa when they get married? The aunt scolded, who knows if it's real? Maybe it's just for show. The uncle said it can't be. I think the watch on his hand is very expensive. It's worth a house here. The aunt still didn't believe it until she received a lawyer's letter after she got back, which demanded to hold her accountable for spreading false remarks everywhere and damaging the reputations of Mr. Leo and Mr. Lucas. The aunt had never received a lawyer's letter before and was extremely frightened. Then Leo's lawyer called her and informed her to prepare for the lawsuit. The aunt was so scared that she went crazy and said, I didn't do anything. You're slandering me. The lawyer said to her kindly, we must have certain evidence before filing a lawsuit. The aunt was so scared that she could hardly speak. She stammered and asked, can you let me go? The lawyer was very polite, you have to ask our president about that. The aunt was stunned, President? The lawyer told her, Mr. Leo, the president of Shearway Technology. You've damaged his reputation. The aunt was so scared that she almost ended up in the hospital. Of course, the lawyer's letter was just a scare, but Leo's identity soon spread. All the relatives instantly knew that the son-in-law of the Yi family was a rich big boss. These are all later stories. During the Spring Festival holiday, the Yi family saw off those annoying relatives and Lucas accompanied Leo to continue wandering around City C. That Cayenne was indeed a car Leo picked up temporarily. He has a cleanliness fetish and is not used to public things, so he got a car in just half a day. Lucas witnessed the power of money again. Leo didn't plan to drive back to City S, so he left the car at the Yi family's place, which was equivalent to giving it away. Lucas was worried that Leo might be in a bad mood because of family matters and accompanied him to relax around. Leo seemed to stop thinking about those annoying family affairs and walked out of the quagmire of memories. He talked and laughed with Lucas, and the few-day holiday was intimate and harmonious. Time passed so fast that it was immediately time to return after the holiday. Miles drove the Cayenne and took the other 3 people to the high-speed railway station. He was still a bit awkward. He didn't want this car, but Leo said that the car would break if it was parked there. He should keep it at the Yi family's place and use it when he came to City C later. Miles had to accept the statement and regarded the car as being temporarily stored with him. There was always a touch of melancholy at the moment of parting. Leo sincerely said, "Aunt Yi, Uncle Kong, thank you. This is the happiest spring festival I've ever had." Camila said with a smile, "You're exaggerating. But it's good that you're happy. I was still afraid of neglecting you." Leo said, "No, I'm not being polite. Being with the Yi family, one would unconsciously be infected with a youthful spirit, which in Leo's view was priceless." Camila said a few more words of advice and stared fixedly at Lucas, showing a reluctant mood. Lucas hugged his mother and said, "Time flies. I'll come back during the May Day holiday." Miles said, "Work hard." He looked at Leo and said meaningfully, "Don't cause trouble for your leader." Camila wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and said, "Yes, people who lose their hair have bad tempers. You should listen to your leader and don't go against him." Lucas held back his laughter and said, "Mom, you're amazing. You even know that our leader has a bad temper." Camila turned to Leo, "You're closer to the leader than Lucas. You also need to pay attention." Miles really couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Young people have their own sense of propriety. The workplace now is different from what it was in our time." Camila was dissatisfied and said with hands on her hips, "What's wrong with you recently? You always talk back to me." Miles remained silent. Wasn't he trying to keep Leo's identity a secret? After a while, Miles was confused. Why should this matter be kept secret? Previously, it was because there didn't seem to be a close relationship between Lucas and Leo and there were still some issues. But during the Spring Festival, the relationship between the two was obviously much closer than during the National Day holiday. It seemed that the problems had been resolved and they were now inseparable. In that case, he could tell his wife that Leo was Lucas's boss. However, at this stage, it was rather difficult to bring it up. Just as Miles was thinking this, Leo said to Camila, "Aunt Yi, do you want to meet Ms. Elena?" Camila was stunned and then said excitedly, Is that possible?" She thought Leo was going to use his connections to get her tickets to the fan club and was immediately overjoyed. As a result, Leo said, "Yes, I can arrange it." His tone was very calm. "Ms. Elena is my mother." Camila was petrified. She thought she was having an auditory hallucination and asked, "What?" Lucas told her with a smile, "Didn't I tell you that our boss is Ms. Elena's son?" He glanced at Leo and said with suppressed embarrassment, "Leo is my superior." Leo let out a laugh when he heard Lucas say that. Camila was still in shock and couldn't come to her senses for a long time. She subconsciously looked at the top of Leo's head. For the first time, Leo felt helpless and said, "I have thick hair." Only then did Camila realize that it had all been Lucas's nonsense. She glared at her son. Seeing that it was almost time to get on the bus, Lucas said, "We have to go." Camila was reluctant to part. She still had many questions to ask Leo. For example, how he had suddenly become the president of the company. Also, how her son suddenly fell in love with the son of her idol. But there was no time. Leo said, "It's settled then. Next time, I'll invite you to City S to have a meal with my mother." Lucas thought to himself that Ms. Elena clearly hadn't accepted him yet. Lucas didn't tell his parents about these things. He just said, "Mom, Dad, I'm leaving. You should take good care of yourselves." The two of them dragged their luggage and walked towards the ticket-checking gate. After seeing her son off, Camila stood there in a daze. Miles sighed, "I was also shocked for a long time when I first found out." Camila came to her senses and asked, "You knew about it earlier?" Realizing his slip of the tongue, Miles quickly shut up. Camila stepped forward and punched him on the shoulder, saying, "You knew it earlier but didn't tell me." After hitting her husband, Camila couldn't help pinching him and asked, "Am I not dreaming?" Enduring the pain, Miles told her, "You're not dreaming. It's real." Only then did Camila belatedly cover her face and said happily, "Oh my God, I'm going to meet my idol." Miles curled his lips, patted the back of his middle-aged wife, and said, "Not only that, you're going to become in laws with your idol." Lucas and Leo sat in the business class of the high-speed train and returned to City S. The seats in the business class were far apart, but Leo still persistently held Lucas' hand. His expression was relaxed and he seemed to be in a good mood. He told Lucas, "This is the first time I've gone out without a bodyguard." Lucas knew that Leo attached great importance to security and always brought bodyguards when going out. Sometimes it seemed that he was alone, but actually the bodyguards must be following him in a hidden place. In the past, Lucas thought this behavior was a habit of the rich. After learning about Leo's past this time, he finally understood that it was Leo's psychological shadow. Lucas looked at Leo and said gently, "You're no longer the same as you were when you were a child. The past is over. Now Leo has become tough and powerful, no longer the defenseless minor he used to be." Lucas knew very well how strong Leo was. It should be the result of deliberate training over the years. Leo could definitely take on 3 people alone. Leo said, "It was only after spending the spring festival at your place that I truly felt the past was over." Lucas smiled and said, "I'm very honored. I'm very honored to have given you a happy and warm experience." As the train headed towards City S, Lucas couldn't help but worry, "What are you going to do after you get back?" Lucas didn't know the exact situation of the Chin family on New Year's Eve. Leo had escaped the spring festival by leaving home, but the problem still remained and he would have to face it when he got back. Leo squeezed his palm and said, "Don't worry. I know what to do." During these days in City C, Leo had also thought a lot and finally made his final decision. It's time to fight a battle. Leo said, "I'll be very busy for some time after the spring festival. You need to be prepared." Lucas smiled and said, "No problem. I'll support you." On the first day of work after the spring festival, as soon as Leo arrived at the company, he called Henry into his office. The two of them talked inside for a whole morning. During that time, Lucas went in to serve tea. He saw that both Leo and Henry looked very serious and couldn't help but feel nervous too. After Lucas served the tea and walked out, he sat down at his own desk with his heart pounding. The president never liked to reveal his plans in advance, and Lucas never asked too many questions. But this time, Lucas felt that it was different. Thinking carefully, the president had done many things in the past 2 years. Those things had their own effects. Once you delved into their underlying meanings, you could find that the president's goal was to firmly hold Shirway in his own hands. Chairman Alexander had tried to interfere several times but was stopped by Leo. Not only was he stopped, but the connection between Shirway and Leo became even closer. Lucas vaguely guessed what Leo was up to and his heart began to beat faster. This accelerated heartbeat had nothing to do with love. He seemed to have returned to the time when he had just become the president's secretary, constantly being amazed by the president's actions and always thinking, can it still be done like this? After the surprise, only admiration remained. Lucas took a sip of water to calm his inner emotions and patiently continued his work. Even he couldn't help but want to fight a beautiful battle. It was almost noon when Henry came out of the president's office. He stopped by Lucas' desk and looked at Lucas with a very profound look. Lucas smiled and said, "Assistant Henry, is there anything I can help with?" Henry said, "I really admire you. You've worked hard." He casually dropped the sentence, took a turn, and went straight back to his own office. Lucas stared at his back, completely confused. These days, it's popular to be a riddle maker. After lunch and the lunch break, Leo called Lucas into the office again. Leo didn't beat around the bush and got straight to the point, "Contact Gene Capital. I want to talk to their executive officer." Lucas was stunned. The executive officer of Gene was none other than Joseph. He couldn't help but look out of the window. Everything was normal, there was no apocalypse. Why did the president suddenly change his ways and take the initiative to contact Joseph? But Lucas didn't raise any objections and said, "Okay, Mr. Leo, I'll make the arrangements." Lucas was about to leave when Leo called him back and asked, "Aren't you curious why?" Lucas smiled and said, "Mr. Leo's arrangements must have their own profound meaning. I just need to follow the instructions." He paused for a moment and continued, "Moreover, even if I'm curious, would you tell me?" Leo twitched the corner of his lips and waved his hand, "Go out." Lucas muttered to himself, "See, it's always like this. Since he won't say anyway, why bother teasing people?" After Lucas left, Leo couldn't help smiling. The young secretary has now found the right attitude. He is neither overly reserved nor overly frivolous. At work, he seems the same as before, yet also somehow different. Lucas can always quickly adapt to the environment, adjust his mindset, and find the most appropriate way to handle problems. Leo leaned back into his office chair and stroked his chin. This instead made him seem distracted. At work, he often thought about Lucas. Just thinking that his young secretary was outside the door, he always hoped that work time would pass quickly so that he could take the person directly to a private place to kiss and hug after work. Leo first discovered that he was actually such a love-struck person. He lost. Lucas contacted Jin's side and quickly confirmed the time, but he didn't accompany Leo to the appointment. The two presidents met alone. After the spring festival, Joseph remained unchanged. His expression was cold and his gold-rimmed glasses hung on the bridge of his nose, hiding his scrutinizing gaze. Leo sat face to face with him, also showing little expression. At first glance, the two really looked a bit alike. It was still Joseph who spoke first. He asked, "What's the matter?" "Just say it," Leo said with a straight face. "Happy New Year." No one could have expected it to be the sentence. Leo explained, "It's still the new year until the 15th day. Joseph adjusted his glasses. He couldn't figure out why Leo said so and just thought it was inexplicable. Leo looked at Joseph, leaned towards him, propped his arms on the table, and said seriously, "Spending the new year alone must be very lonely, right?" What on earth was this person trying to say? Leo continued, "There isn't even someone to care about you around. There was also Valentine's Day during the spring festival. How did it feel to see others in pairs while you were alone?" Joseph stared at him. After a while, he uttered a few words from his thin lips, "The feeling of having a mental illness, just like yours." Leo didn't care and pretended not to hear. Then he continued, "I'm different. I had a very fulfilling New Year. I went to Lucas' hometown. His parents were very nice to me. He took me around during the day and accompanied me at night. He is so gentle and lovely." Joseph looked at Leo as if he were a madman. Joseph didn't understand why someone with a mental illness didn't go for treatment but deliberately came in front of him to have a breakdown. Joseph asked, "Does Secretary Lucas know you're like this outside?" Leo looked expressionless, but there was a smug look in his eyes. He said, "Our Lucas would never dislike me." The mechanical shell on Joseph's face finally cracked a bit. "Lucas. What a terrifying name." Joseph said in an absolutely freezing voice, "Did you ask me to meet just to let me watch you go crazy?" Leo said, "How can this be called going crazy? Anyone who has been in love can understand." Then he suddenly realized, "Oh, you've never been in love. Well, it makes sense that you can't understand." In Joseph's eyes, Leo was no longer a madman but a dead man. He stood up from the table and said coldly, "Since you're not here to talk about business, I won't accompany you anymore." Leo still pretended not to hear. He took out his phone, opened the photo album, and put it in front of Joseph for him to look at. "We took a lot of photos during the new year. Do you want to have a look?" Joseph hung his head and looked at Leo and his phone with a cold gaze. After a moment, somehow he sat back in his seat and looked at the photos in Leo's album. Some of those photos were selfies and some were taken by others. In each photo, Leo and Lucas were very intimate. Lucas was smiling brightly while Leo was more reserved, but there was a gentle light in his eyes, which was completely different from the Leo Joseph had seen in public or privately. There were also a few photos that seemed to be secretly taken by Leo. The Lucas in Leo's camera was also different from the secretary Lucas he knew. He was radiant and lively. The sunlight fell on him as if he had come to life, jumping with the vitality on him. "Don't we make a good couple?" Leo asked. Joseph couldn't answer. Leo didn't care about Joseph's answer either and evaluated himself, a match made in heaven. After Joseph finished looking at those photos, he said, "I finished looking." "Then what on earth do you want to express?" Leo put away his phone, looked directly at Joseph, and finally got to the main topic of today. He said leisurely, "I want to express. Do you want to cooperate with me?"